Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take your stack of sources, the articles, the research, all those deep questions, and distill them into something clean, something powerful. Today, we are digging into a paradox that I think hits almost every single one of us at some point. It's this. Can you be too self-aware to actually be happy? I mean, we live in a world that insists self-awareness is this, this ultimate virtue, the key to growth. And yet, the material you've gathered suggests there's a point where knowing yourself too well or seeing the world too clearly, it becomes, well, less of a superpower and more of a heavy anchor. So let me just ask you directly, have you ever felt like you're standing outside your own life, stuck narrating your choices, analyzing your feelings instead of just living them?
That tension you're describing, that gap between knowing and living, that is exactly what we're here to explore today. Our mission, really, is to find that precise point where your awareness starts expanding faster than your sense of peace can handle it. You start collecting all this wisdom, this perspective, but instead of feeling free, the knowledge just starts to feel heavy, like something you have to carry.
Okay, so it's a weight.
It's a weight. And the sources, they offer a really profound two-part answer. They argue that, yes, awareness can absolutely dismantle the foundations of your comfortable happiness.
Which sounds terrifying.
It does. But they immediately follow that up by saying that this destructive phase is, well, it's mandatory. It is the only real path toward building a truly mature, resilient kind of happiness. So we're going to walk through the tearing down first and then the rebuilding.
All right, let's unpack that destructive phase. The discussion starts right inside our own minds with this idea that as we get older, our mind becomes less of a quiet observer and more of a magnifying glass.
That's a perfect image for it. And the magnification, it isn't just about seeing more. It's about changing the perceived size and importance of everything you're looking at. All that accumulated experience, that wisdom, it's incredibly valuable, of course. You see patterns, you understand motivations.
Things you were blind to before.
Exactly. But that depth comes with this heavy complexity. Suddenly, simple decisions become massive because you can predict, like, 10 different ways they could go wrong.
I totally get that feeling of complexity just slowing everything down. But shouldn't wisdom speed things up? I mean, shouldn't recognizing patterns make choices quicker, cleaner? Why does it lead to what the research calls analysis paralysis?
Well, it leads to paralysis because the highly aware mind starts to confuse probability with certainty. If you're analyzing a choice, say moving to a new city, you don't just see the good stuff.
Right.
You see every single painful, nuanced way it could fail. Because you have this huge library of personal data to draw from. You overprocess it until the decision isn't about the facts anymore. It becomes this whole existential thing about who you are and who you might regret becoming.
So it's not just information overload, it's regret projection overload. The source mentions this disconnects you from instinct. Can you say more on that?
Absolutely. The moment your analytical mind goes into overdrive, you lose touch with your gut feeling, that quiet, deep part of you that often knows what you need long before your conscious mind can articulate it. The thinking process creates so much distance between the self and the action that the natural flow just stops.
Is there a practical example of this where overthinking causes like an immediate measurable failure?
There is, and it's a really compelling one. They draw a parallel to high-performance athletes. Think of a professional golfer or a world-class pianist.
Yeah.
Decades of training. Their movements are automatic. It's pure muscle memory. But if, mid-swing, that golfer starts consciously thinking, okay, what's the angle of my elbow? Am I breathing right? The whole thing collapses.
The thinking gets in the way of the doing.
A thinking mind literally sabotages the doing body. We're always telling ourselves to be more mindful. But if you apply that hyper-analytical mindset to just living your life, you can't just be, and this brings us right to the next level of this pain, what they call the observer effect.
Yeah, okay.
This is that psychological split. It creates two versions of you, the one trying to live and the internal critic who's just stepping back, constantly judging, critiquing everything.
That sounds completely exhausting, like living with a permanent review committee in your brain.
It is exhausting.
Yeah.
And it inevitably turns the living you into an object, something to be measured or fixed instead of just you. And the older you get, the more material that observer has to work with. It starts focusing on these deep fears like, am I still relevant? Am I becoming a burden? Did I waste my potential?
And the sources mention a specific consequence of this, which is high-definition flaws, because you have this intimate front row seat to your own mind. You see every selfish thought, every moment of fear, every petty motivation. You see your own shortcomings in incredible detail.
Precisely. Everyone else's flaws are seen from a distance, so they're fuzzy and distant. But yours are in 4K, right in your
Yeah.
face. And this creates this devastating distortion where you start to genuinely believe you are uniquely flawed.
It's fundamentally broken in a way other people aren't.
Yes, despite all the objective evidence that says otherwise.
That's so painful. So, I mean, if this is the cycle, does the research suggest that people caught in it are better off just not being self-aware?
The knee-jerk reaction is a wish for ignorance, right? But the research argues against that. The problem isn't the awareness itself, it's the inner critic. Highly self-aware people, they often have these impossibly high standards, usually based on some fantasy version of who they think they should be. And if you have a long life behind you, you have decades of material to measure the gap between the life you imagined and the life you actually lived.
So the awareness is just the camera, but the judgment, that's the weapon.
That's a perfect way to put it. Knowing your flaws is not the same as being defined by them. Awareness has just made you conscious of the messy, complicated, sometimes ugly reality of being human. The pain comes when you use that awareness to beat yourself up with an impossible yardstick.
Okay, let's shift that magnifying glass outward now. What happens when this awareness expands beyond just yourself to the harsh realities of the world? I'm talking about the randomness, the suffering, the lack of cosmic justice.
This is often the deepest source of that existential pain. I mean, when we're younger, we're kind of protected by these really crucial, comforting illusions.
Like what?
Like the idea that hard work always equals success, or that good things happen to good people, that the universe has some kind of underlying logical order to it.
And the longer you live, the more you see that's, well, not always true. The sources call this one of the darkest aspects of consciousness. What does that really mean?
It means those fundamental illusions just fall away. You realize mortality isn't some abstract concept, it's a fixed timeline for you. You see that the systems we all rely on, political, financial, are incredibly fragile. And, crucially, you start to accept that there's no guaranteed purpose written in the stars for you. The more clearly you see reality, the less comfortable it becomes.
When those beliefs shatter, it just seems so natural that people would wish they could go back. You know, that feeling of ignorance really was bliss. Why should we choose to endure that painful clarity?
That feeling is completely understandable, but it's a trap. Because once you see the flaws in the world and in yourself, trying to unsee them is a kind of self-delusion. And you can't build deep, true contentment on a delusion. The agony is in being conscious enough to ask the biggest questions. Why is this happening? What's the point? But not having any easy prepackaged answers handed to you.
And for a lot of people, that fruitless search for answers leads to what the sources call a quiet despair.
Yes, it's not always a big, crushing depression. It can be just this subtle, pervasive sense of disappointment, this feeling that life is fundamentally unfair, and that satisfaction is always just out of reach because the universe just doesn't care.
Okay, we have spent enough time in the destructive part. The crucial pivot here in the material is that this dismantling, it's not a failure, it's an invitation. It's clearing the space to build something truer.
Absolutely. Think of disillusionment, whether it's about a relationship or an ideal or yourself, not as a failure, but as incredibly precise, if painful, information. It shows you exactly where your old way of thinking was flawed. You have to be willing to tear down the rotten parts of the old structure before you can build one that will actually last.
And you can't go back. Once you know, you know. So the only way is through the discomfort. So how does this second phase, the rebuilding, use the same tool that caused all the destruction in the first place?
It just shifts the function of the tool.
Yeah.
So in phase 1, awareness tears things down. In phase 2, it helps you figure out what to build in their place. And this is where the real liberation happens. If you can truly accept that there's no grand cosmic plan, no purpose waiting for you to discover, well, that awareness frees you from the endless, exhausting search.
That's a huge shift. If I stop searching for some external meaning, what do I do instead?
The power and the responsibility, they shift entirely back to you. You get to decide what matters. You get to create meaning, moment by moment, instead of waiting for the universe to give it to you. So that awareness of uncertainty stops being about despair, and it becomes radical freedom.
Okay, let's make that practical. Let's go back to the self-criticism. If I'm painfully aware that I'm holding myself to some crazy, unrealistic standard, that awareness is what's causing the pain. How does it also help me drop the standard?
Because the pain is the indicator light. The awareness guides you to ask the right questions. Where did this standard even come from? Is it actually serving my life, or am I just serving this standard? You realize this impossible ideal, it's just an idea. It's not a law of physics.
So the tool that showed me the problem is the same tool I use to build the solution.
Exactly. The tool that dismantled the old idea is the very same one that helps you construct a new, sustainable one based on self-acceptance and realistic growth. So if awareness is both the problem and the solution, the last critical step is learning how to live skillfully with it. And the material lays out four essential tools for cultivating what you could call mature awareness.
All right, let's do them. Tool number one is about combating that cognitive overload. Recognize that not every thought deserves equal weight. Our brains are just constantly generating static. Some of it's useful, some is pointless, some is just cruel.
Right, and high self-awareness just means you notice more of the static. But the key is observation, not identification. You can see a negative thought pop into your head and just treat it as mental noise, like a badly tuned radio station. You don't have to believe it's the absolute truth about you. That practice creates distance. You become the observer of the thought, not the captive of the thought. And that distance is essential for peace.
Okay. Tool number two tackles those crippling standards. Be rigorously realistic about your ideals. So much suffering comes from comparing yourself to this fantasy version of yourself.
Or a highlight reel of your past, yeah. You have to actively question where your standards come from. I mean, if you're holding yourself to a standard you would never demand from a friend, that's a punishing standard. It's not helpful. The goal is movement, it's growth. It's not arriving at some state of perfection. If you can see yourself as a person who is allowed to be imperfect, you stop treating yourself as a problem that needs to be solved.
I like that. The third tool is the antidote to analysis paralysis. Reconnect with the non-cognitive self. So deliberately giving your thinking brain a break.
Yes. Engage your body, your instincts, your emotions. Overthinking happens when we live entirely in our heads. The solution is to do things that require your full presence. It can be a hobby, or truly listening to someone in a conversation without planning what you're going to say next, or just, going for a hike. The point is to experience what it feels like to just be in the flow instead of constantly monitoring yourself. It's a reset button.
And finally, tool number four, which really seems to be the linchpin for all the others, practice genuine self-compassion.
This one feels counterintuitive to a lot of people. They confuse it with self-indulgence or having low standards.
Yeah.
It is neither of those things. Self-compassion is an act of clarity, of strength. If you had a friend who was documenting every single one of their failures and never gave themselves any credit, you'd step in and tell them to ease up a little.
Of course.
Self-compassion is just offering yourself that same basic patience, acknowledging that you're worthy of kindness even when you mess up, because that kindness actually promotes resilience way more effectively than judgment ever could. And when you put all these tools together, what starts to emerge is what we can call mature awareness. It's an awareness that sees the world and yourself clearly. It doesn't flinch from the hard truths or your personal flaws, but it does it without sliding into judgment or despair. This steady, non-reactive perspective. It's truly one of the greatest gifts of getting older.
So what does this all mean for our big question? It means awareness can make you miserable. If you only use it as a tool for criticism, or if you only use it to strip away illusions without building something real in their place.
But that same awareness is the only path forward. The happiness that comes from it is deeper, it's quieter, it's infinitely more reliable than some naive happiness built on comforting lies. It's rooted in clarity and acceptance. It lets you hold life lightly, even when things are hard.
It's choice. To engage and create meaning, even when you're fully aware of all the limitations. The awareness you carry, it's not some burden you have to overcome. It's a powerful tool you just have to learn to use skillfully. So the challenge for you, the listener, is this. Let your awareness show you not just where you fall short, but also where you've grown, what you've survived, and what's truly possible when you decide to build your life on acceptance and intention instead of on the fragile promise of perfection.